We chose that place because it was far from everything, the kind of spot you only reach if you really want to be alone. It sat deep inside the national forest, miles from the nearest road, far beyond where most people ever bother to go. There were no cabins, no campsites marked on any map, and no signs of recent human activity. That was the point. We wanted quiet, real quiet, the kind you can only find when the world feels very far away. It was just the two of us, me and Alex, along with one tent, a small fire pit, and our packs stuffed with food, water, and gear. We parked at the trailhead early that morning and hiked in while the sun was still climbing. The air was cool, the forest alive with birds and the sound of wind moving gently through the trees. Everything felt normal, peaceful, and safe in a way that only daylight can make you believe. By the time we reached our chosen clearing, the day had warmed up. We dropped our packs, set up the tent, and gathered wood for later. Nearby, a narrow stream cut through the forest, clear and cold. We spent the afternoon fishing there, standing side by side, talking and laughing like we used to back in college. We caught a couple of small fish, nothing impressive, but it didn't matter. It felt good just being there, away from responsibilities, away from noise. As the sun dipped lower, we headed back to camp and built a fire. The flames crackled softly as we cooked hot dogs and ate straight from the sticks. We shared a few beers from the cooler we had dragged in, joking about old girlfriends, dumb mistakes, and stories we had told each other 100 times before. There was no rush, no tension, no reason to think anything was wrong. It was one of those evenings you wish could last longer. When the fire burned down to glowing embers, the forest around us grew darker. Shadows stretched between the trees, and the sounds of daytime faded away. We cleaned up, doused the fire, and crawled into the tent. Alex zipped the door shut and settled into his sleeping bag. "Night, dude," he muttered, already half asleep. "Yeah, sleep well," I replied. Inside the tent, it was completely dark. The kind of darkness that feels thick, where you can't even see your hand in front of your face. I lay there listening, hearing Alex's breathing slow as he drifted off. Outside, the usual forest sounds continued. Crickets chirped steadily, leaves rustled now and then, and somewhere far off, an owl called. For a while, everything felt fine. Then I heard something that didn't belong. At first, it was so faint I almost ignored it. A low hum, steady and distant, like an engine far away. I told myself it was probably a plane passing overhead or maybe just my imagination filling the silence. But the sound didn't fade. Instead, it grew louder, deeper, closer. I sat up in my sleeping bag, listening harder. The hum turned into a rumble. My stomach tightened as the realization crept in. It sounded like a vehicle, like a car or a truck moving slowly through the forest. That didn't make sense. This area was hiking only. No roads. No vehicle access. Anyone driving out here would have to leave the trail and push through trees and uneven ground. I leaned closer to Alex and whispered his name. "Alex, wake up. Do you hear that?" He shifted and groaned. "What?" Before I could answer, the sound grew louder again, close enough now that I could feel a faint vibration through the ground. Then, suddenly, headlights flashed between the trees. The entire tent lit up. Bright white light poured through the fabric, turning our small shelter into a glowing shape in the darkness. The rumble stopped just beyond the edge of the clearing. An engine shut off. Doors opened and slammed shut. Footsteps followed. More than one set. Alex sat up fully now, his voice low and tight. "Who's that?" I didn't answer. I was too focused on listening. Voices drifted through the trees, low and unclear. Male voices. 2, maybe 3 of them. They were close, closer than I liked, no more than 20 feet away. I felt my pulse start to race, each heartbeat loud in my ears. I slowly leaned toward the small mesh window of the tent and peeked out. My view was limited, but I could make out the dark shape of a large truck parked right at the edge of our clearing. It looked out of place, like it didn't belong there at all. One of the men flicked a lighter. For a brief second, the flame illuminated his face. He had a rough beard, sharp eyes, and a hard expression as he scanned the area. The light snapped off, plunging everything back into darkness. "What do we do?" Alex whispered. "Stay quiet," I whispered back. "Maybe they're just lost." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Nobody accidentally drove this deep into the forest at night. Nobody ignored the rules, went off trail, and ended up right at our camp by chance. One of the men started walking closer. A flashlight clicked on, and a narrow beam of light swept across the ground, over our packs, and then straight onto the tent. The fabric glowed again as the beam paused, resting on us. I held my breath. "Hey," a voice called out. It was rough and gravelly. "Anyone in there?" Alex and I looked at each other in the dark. His eyes were wide. He mouthed words without sound. "Should we answer?" I shook my head slowly. "No." The man waited a moment, then spoke again. "We saw your fire earlier. Just checking if you're okay." The words sounded friendly, but the tone didn't match. It felt wrong, like he was testing us, waiting to see how we'd respond. Somewhere behind him, another man chuckled softly. Then, without another word, the flashlight clicked off. Footsteps moved away. For a brief moment, I felt a small wave of relief. Maybe they were leaving. Maybe we'd stay quiet, and this would all pass. But the engine didn't start. Instead, we heard more movement. Doors opened again. Something metallic clinked, the sound sharp and unnatural in the quiet forest. It reminded me of tools, or maybe something heavier. I couldn't tell, and that made it worse. Minutes passed slowly, each one stretching longer than the last. My thoughts raced, jumping to every possible explanation. Hunters. Poachers. Thieves. Or something worse. I remembered the cars we had passed at the trailhead earlier that day, wondering if any of them belonged to these men. Alex leaned close. "I think they're setting up camp," he whispered. I shook my head. "No tents. No bags. They're not camping." As if to confirm my fear, one of the men began walking around our clearing. His footsteps moved in a slow circle, crunching softly on the dirt and leaves. Each lap brought him closer to the tent. I could hear his boots clearly now, steady and deliberate. "They're watching us," I whispered. Alex nodded, his face pale in the dim light. The circling stopped suddenly. A twig snapped just outside the tent, close enough that I could hear someone breathing through the fabric. Heavy, slow breaths. "I know you're awake," a different voice said quietly. It was calm, almost amused. "Come out and say hi." Alex grabbed my arm, his grip tight. He mouthed the words, "No way." My phone was in my pocket, useless without signal. We had checked earlier. No bars. No help. No easy way out. The man laughed softly. "Suit yourselves," he said. "We'll be here all night." Footsteps moved away, but not far. Voices picked up again, low and casual, as if they had all the time in the world. I caught fragments of words drifting through the trees. "Easy pickings. Wait till morning." A cold pressure settled in my chest. I imagined knives, guns, ropes, and things I didn't want to think about. The fear wasn't sharp or sudden. It was slow, creeping, building with every passing minute. We didn't sleep. Hours dragged by. One of the men walked away to relieve himself nearby. Another coughed repeatedly. They talked, laughed, and moved around like they owned the place. Alex whispered plans, his voice shaking slightly. As soon as it was light enough to see, we would pack fast and run. What if they block the trail, he whispered. What if they follow us? I didn't have answers. When the first gray light finally filtered through the trees, I felt both relief and dread. Morning meant visibility, but it also meant they could see us clearly now. We moved slowly, quietly, stuffing our sleeping bags and gear into our packs. I reached for the tent zipper. As it opened, I saw them. 3 men stood near their truck, drinking coffee from thermoses, staring straight at our camp. One of them raised his hand and waved, a slow, mocking gesture. "Morning, boys," he called. "Sleep well?" My heart sank. We stepped out of the tent slowly, trying not to show how tense we were, though my legs already felt weak and tight like they might give out at any moment. The morning air was cold and damp, and the forest that had felt peaceful the day before now felt like it was closing in around us. The 3 men didn't move from their spot near the truck. They just watched us, relaxed, confident, as if they had been waiting for this moment. Alex tightened the straps on his pack, his hands shaking despite his effort to stay calm. I did the same, forcing myself to breathe steadily. We didn't bother folding the tent or packing neatly. Everything went straight into the bags, fast and careless. "We're heading out," I said, trying to sound firm and normal. My voice didn't quite come out the way I wanted. One of the men laughed. It wasn't loud, just a short, amused sound. "No rush," he said. "Trail's that way." He pointed casually in the direction we already knew, as if he were being helpful. As we started walking, trying to pass them with a wide gap, another man stepped forward and blocked the path. Up close, he was bigger than I had thought. Thick arms, tattoos crawling up his skin, and a long scar cutting across his cheek. "You forgot something," he said, nodding toward our campsite. "Left some gear." "Forget it," Alex snapped, his fear turning into anger. He tried to step around the man. The man reached out and grabbed Alex's shoulder, gripping hard. "Hey," he said quietly. "Manners." Something in me snapped. I shoved his hand away. "Let go of him." For a moment, no one moved. The air felt heavy, like the seconds were stretching too long. The other 2 men stepped closer, forming a loose half-circle around us. Their expressions were calm, almost bored, but their eyes were sharp and cold. They looked like they were enjoying this. "What's the hurry?" the man with the scar asked. "We could share breakfast." "No thanks," I said. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "We're leaving." We backed up a step, then another. Suddenly, without saying anything else, Alex turned and ran. I followed instantly, not thinking, just moving. Branches slapped against my arms as we sprinted down the narrow trail, packs bouncing against our backs. Behind us, laughter erupted. Then the truck engine roared to life. "They're coming," Alex panted as we ran. I glanced back just long enough to see the truck crawling forward, forcing its way along the trail, branches scraping loudly against the sides. It moved slow but steady, like it didn't need to rush. Like it knew it would catch us. "Faster," I yelled. My legs burned, lungs aching as we dodged roots and rocks. The forest blurred around us. Alex stumbled, falling hard and scraping his knee. For a split second, I thought it was over. But he pushed himself up with a grunt and kept running. The truck horn blasted behind us, long and mocking. Fear pushed us harder than our bodies wanted to go. My mind raced with dark thoughts. What would they do if they caught us? Rob us? Hurt us? Worse? The way they smiled made me feel like we weren't just obstacles to them. We were entertainment. The trail widened briefly, and I saw our chance. I grabbed Alex's arm and yanked him toward a thick stand of trees. We plunged into the undergrowth, branches tearing at our clothes. The truck couldn't follow. It stopped with a loud crunch as tires spun uselessly. We ran until our sides ached, then dropped behind a fallen log, pressing ourselves flat against the ground. We barely breathed, listening. The engine revved again, then cut off. Doors opened. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. One of the men called out, his voice sing-song and mocking. "Come out, come out." I squeezed my eyes shut. Alex's breathing was shallow beside me. Leaves crunched nearby as they searched, their steps passing just close enough that I could smell cigarette smoke. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, angry curses broke the silence. Doors slammed. The engine started again, and the truck backed away, the sound fading slowly into the distance. We didn't move for a long time after that. When we were sure they were gone, we carefully worked our way back toward the main road using a different route, moving slow, alert to every sound. Eventually, we reached the road and flagged down a passing ranger. We told him everything. He listened quietly, his expression serious, and took notes. He promised to report it, but there was something in his eyes that told me he wasn't surprised. We never went back for our tent or gear. Even now, when I think about that night, I still hear the footsteps circling our tent and the engine idling in the dark. I think about how close we were to answering that first call, stepping outside, trusting strangers in the woods. And I wonder what would have happened if we had.